Hey everybody, I'm Angie Goff, and this is the Oh My Goff Show. For nearly 2 decades, I've covered big stories and big names, whether it was reporting from the royal wedding, the Super Bowl, or sitting down with the First Lady. There's one thing I know for sure. Behind every headline is a human story, one filled with ups, downs, laughter, and life lessons. Each episode, we'll tap into some pretty incredible minds, people who've found true success in chasing their dream or changing the world. It's the story behind the story that I hope will inspire your own. This is the Oh My Goff Show with Angie Goff. Hey, how's everybody doing? So great to have you join us for another episode. And this one, let me tell you, you're going to want to sit through the whole thing, whether you're watching it or you're listening to us, wherever you get your favorite podcast. Let me tell you, the story we're going to share today is one that is just incredible. And I know we share a lot of incredible people, but it's almost unbelievable. And before we do that, I do want to say thank you for all of the questions and life questions you've sent. Yes, we are going to have another installation of the good question, and we got a few that we need to address, and it's on the topic of love.
But what about us?
We'll always have Paris.
I'm going to bring in Jess McCann, who is dating coach guru. She's amazing. She's written a couple books. She's been on a reality show. She's awesome. Don't forget to send your life questions. Something that we can help you out with, or you just need some advice on, okay? You're stuck in a pickle. 202-918-5313. 202-918-5313. Text me. All right. Okay. Back to the main event. Khadijah Williams, she is a homeless advocate for youth. She's also a survivor of homelessness herself, spending nearly 20 years bouncing from place to place without a permanent home. It's pretty incredible because her story has been told by Oprah a couple times. She even got a shout out by Oprah Winfrey at graduation.
I went to the bathroom because one of my mentors / third mom had to use the restroom, and I had to show her where it is. And then my friend who visited me came running, screaming, said, Khadijah, come out, Oprah's talking about you. I'm just like, what? And so I think it's funny because now I can say, oh yeah, Oprah was talking about me, and I was like completely like at another place.
When I met up with Khadijah, it was at the new chapter of her life. She's now working as a professional at the Rocketship public charter school in DC, which primarily serves low-income youth. And her role there is senior education organizer, but you're going to realize that it is so much more than just organizing and educating. She really is all about advocating not only for these children, but for the parents as well, and really trying to establish a bond and a connection and loyalty, because she knows firsthand that we are not victims of our circumstances, or we don't have to be. And that really is going to be the theme of our interview, is that it doesn't matter where you are. You just cannot wait, right? You can't wait for the perfect situation, the perfect man, the perfect woman, all the money in the world, a great job, to go after what you want and to go after your dreams, or what you really in your heart of hearts believe that you are capable of. She is a shining example of someone who knows who she is and knew that she was not the cards that she was dealt as a child. Khadijah Williams started out as a young homeless girl on Skid Row, the infamous Skid Row, and ended up at Harvard, graduating. This is her story. It is an honor to be sitting here with Khadijah Williams, who has such an extraordinary story. We are sitting here at the Rocketship Charter School, which is just such a far cry from the kind of education and the kind of upbringing that you had. Did you ever imagine that you would be in the position you are now, considering where you started?
That's a really good question. I didn't know where I would be, but what I knew was that I had to be somewhere where, one, I was not experiencing the kind of trauma that I was experiencing, and two, so that I can do something so that no one else has to experience it ever again. And so the only thing I knew was, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to be in education. That's going to be my calling. Mm-hmm. But I would not have imagined that I would be here, sitting in front of you and talking about, the work that I'm doing. Like that's really cool and important to me, because it's really important people hear my story, but it's also really important that people see like me making like decisions and creating space for others to make decisions that have the kind of experiences I've had, so that we can actually shape change. So that's
Thanks to YouTube, we could actually follow your journey from the time that it actually started taking off. And just to bring everybody to speed, because this is a podcast that is about stories of inspiration, stories of struggle, and stories of overcoming things and transforming. And you embody all of that. And I watched some of the Oprah segments, and so, I kind of got like a brief synopsis of how you grew up. From what I understand, since the age of 6, you were you didn't have a home. You were in and out of homeless shelters. If you could walk us back so that we can understand why you're here, why this mission, why you're so passionate about it, what brought you to this point. For us to understand that, I think we really need to take a look back at the story, the history, all those little bits that built this life that you have today, that built this impact that you're having today. So can you take us back to Skid Row?
Absolutely, yes. And to understand why I'm here, like, it's really important that you understand where I came from. And so when people think of homelessness, they think of a man on the street, dirty clothes, holes, may or may not have mental health problems. And that is the face of homelessness, but there's more to homelessness than that. The other faces of homelessness is the type of homelessness I experienced, where it was me, my little sister, and my mother who had untreated paranoid schizophrenia as a result of trauma she experienced as a child herself. And think about your children, and think about your child. And think about, what is it that makes them a child? The fact that they have this curiosity, the fact that they have this sense of wonder, the fact that they can go out and try things and they know that, oh, mom's right there. I have the security blanket. Like, imagine those things of childhood. Imagine your child not having that. Whenever your child tries to be a child, there's danger, it feels like everywhere. There's a man who is sticking a needle in your face and another person is trying to move you away. Imagine trying to figure out where you're going to just sit, because the shelter's closed during the day. And so you have to go to park, try to avoid police officers giving you yet another ticket for existing, criminalizing you not having a home. Imagine being in different spaces. You don't know where you're going to be tomorrow. You don't know where you're going to be the next day.
And that happened a lot, right?
All the time. I went to 12 different schools in 12 years. If you name a city in California, I have probably stayed there.
And where do you stay? I mean, are these shelters?
Shelters,
did you stay
outside, bus stations, motels, never hotel, motels, with roaches that are just dirty and filthy because it's whatever you can afford.
Yeah.
And just like spaces like abandoned homes that are like condemned, don't have running water. Basically, like, think of a can of sardines. That is how in most shelters people live. They're like just stacked like right next to each other and on cots in armories that they just squish together because they need to put a lot of different people in one space. And just imagine lots of noise. Like, it's never quiet. It's just there's yelling, there's screaming, there's crying. There's like people shouting because they see things that aren't there. And it's just a lot of chaos. And so if you take a child and, you know, that natural sort of like curiosity and wonder, and you put them into that kind of space, that childhood is just one of fear, of not knowing what to expect. And that affects you. Like, even now as an adult, like, it still affects me, where if people make sudden moves, like I flinch, you know, if people, you know, like, if I have to move, even though I choose to move, I still get incredibly stressed out about it. And moving is stressful anyway.
Yeah.
But it's tied
It's a different
to
level.
It's tied to change. I almost didn't graduate from college because Harvard was the longest I've ever been anywhere, and I didn't want to move. And so I was this close to just not graduating just so I could be in one space. So that's the kind of instability that I had as a child.
Yeah. So you heard right there, we from that type of beginning, in and out of homeless shelters and living on the street, to Harvard, right? And it doesn't just happen that way.
It's not just one extreme to another. I've experienced like both ends.
I mean, come on.
Just to mix it up.
But there is so much in between. And I have to ask you, you really talk about that natural curiosity, the wonder that we have as children. I didn't grow up homeless, so to speak, but we didn't have a lot. I was just watching a video of when we were little, and we were in an 800 square foot apartment in Korea, which is what we all lived in, and we shared. But as a child, like, you don't really know. All you know is what you have, right?
Yep.
And so how were you able to not let your experience there in and out of these shelters, living on Skid Row, seeing what you saw every day, being around kids that were experiencing the same thing, how were you able to not let that experience define you and your future and where you wanted to go?
Education, and it's why I'm in education. And it's really important for me to say something. My story is often one where people would try to say, you pulled yourself out by your bootstraps. You really you got yourself out. And like, yes, there was a certain level of drive that I had to get me where I needed to go. But it's very important that I say that the reason why we're talking about this story is because it's still an anomaly. And it's still an anomaly because what I had to do to get here was, make sure I assimilate, make sure that I was like the good, like the nice, like quiet Black child that, that didn't scare off white people, because a lot of white people helped me. And so it's making sure that that I was nice. And my little sister, on the other hand, she's smarter than I am, but she was complete like opposite of me. Like, you would even describe her as a hood rat. Beta blood, cussed out everybody, cussed out her mama, cussed out me, cussed out her teachers. And she's graduating from college now. But people would tell me, my mentors, that she wasn't going to amount to anything because she almost didn't graduate high school. She failed all of her classes, and now she's going to go to grad school for social work. It's important to say that because education saved me, and I'm in this work because it saved me because I knew how to play the game. I love school. School was a sanctuary for me. It was something that I was good at. It was something that I could, I can disassociate from what I was experiencing. And that is what's really important, is that kids have a place that they can escape, that is a refuge and a safe place. And that's what helped me.
And you had a place you escaped to a lot, right?
The library.
Yeah. Was it the LA County Library?
Yep, I love that library.
Is that where you would just spend all your time? Really?
Yep. So I, read just all kinds of books. They had all these learning games. And so I would just spend all day there because most of my time wasn't in school. It was because we moved around a lot. So I'd be in the library a lot. And so that's how I kept up. And so that, like, having access and being able to be a child in those spaces and having that access to learning and loving school and being good at school is what really helped me to be able to get to the place I was. But I was able to even see, even as a child, that it still wasn't quite fair. Like, I still had teachers who said negative things to my mom or to me directly. I've had teachers make me cry in elementary school, middle school, and in high school because of the mean things that they said. Oh, you didn't get this good test score because we think your daughter cheated. Or you can't join this because you've been absent too many times. Or we're going to risk you getting to college and giving you this F because you didn't turn this paper. Never mind that you're going from Orange County to Los Angeles, which is a 4-hour bus ride, multiple bus and train ride. And so even though I was able to assimilate into school, I still have challenges. And that was with me being good at school and me having the supports, lots of supports from people who were comfortable with helping me as an articulate, good Black child. And it's really important, especially as a Black leader, that I say that, because that's why so many of our kids don't succeed is because they show their trauma through acting out, through throwing things, through cursing.
Yeah.
And they still deserve help too. They still deserve support, and they still have, dreams. I have a parent a parent leader that I work with who is one of my parent leaders, in my work. She started an organization, and she was a parent who was in went to alternative school. She experienced her own trauma, and now she's in this really selective incubator for ideas, and she was written off. And so it's really important that I say that as someone who is a success story who went to Harvard, because you shouldn't have to assimilate the way I did in order to be successful. I shouldn't have to be the good, articulate child in order to receive help. And that's why I'm in this work, to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Your mom, what kind of role did she play in all this? I mean, obviously, when we're talking about schizophrenia, as someone who's had it in my family as well, I just know how challenging that can be, especially if it goes untreated.
It's funny. This sounds like something that someone would make up, but I swear this happened. She used to call me Oprah.
No.
She would call me Oprah. When that woman, this was third grade, and the third grade teacher said that, because I basically tested in the 99th percentile, for this state California test. I think it was the Cat 6.
Yeah.
And then the teacher was like, oh, she clearly cheated. My mom said to her, and I swear this actually happened. It sounds like, it's so funny. She was like, no, my daughter is Oprah. So she's smart.
Period. Okay?
Yes.
Period. My daughter is Oprah, okay?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And
did you ever tell Oprah that?
I did. I think I did tell her. I'm pretty sure I told her. She would call me Oprah. And she's like, say you are smart. And it wasn't perfect. So unfortunately, when you have untreated schizophrenia, you're paranoid. And so she would have these violent outbursts. And there was a lot of emotional and physical abuse in the household, which is, and I know that could be a whole nother podcast itself. But these are things that our families deal with, kind of mental health problems. And so that was challenging, but she was still there. And at the core was someone who believed in me, who saw that, her children were intelligent, and she wasn't going to have anyone tell her otherwise. And that was critically important. She would make sure I would get to the library. She would make sure I had clean clothes. She would do whatever she could, just beg for money to have enough money so that she can buy us clothes and wash our clothes. That was very important to her. And so even though you can look at the way that, she raised us, and you can say, yeah, she wasn't a great mom, and probably we should have been taken away by CFSA. Or Child Protective Services. That probably should have happened. But with what she had, she did the best she could, and she still was able to instill in me that I was destined for greatness. And that's why she was literally, she's you are Oprah.
How is she now?
So she died in 2011.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
but she got to see you succeed, right? And
she got to see me. She got to see me get on a plane to go to Harvard. She didn't get to see me graduate because I graduated in 2013.
She saw you make that leap.
Yes, and she knew I was. Yes. And
what did she say to all this?
So when she was on her deathbed, I had to basically this was in the middle of final exams. I'd be okay, I can't take any of my final exams, so I had to fly out to California. And it was me and my little sister and some other family members who I don't know, unfortunately. And when she was on her last breath, she was really holding on. It's amazing how long she held on. She asked, she's are you going to be okay? And are you going to take care of your little sister? And I said, yes. I said, I will take care of my little sister, and I am going to be okay. I have this chosen family that I've created, not related to me, but people who've been very supportive of me, and I'm going to be okay. And then she passed that night. So that was really important. And so basically she died of AIDS-related encephalitis because one of her partners unfortunately gave her AIDS. Because one of the things that you try to do when you're homeless is you try to find different ways of having places to live.
Yeah.
And so she had these boyfriends who were unfortunately up to no good, and then one of them had given her, and that's something that happens a lot to Black women, is they'll have a partner who somehow contracted it, and then they give it to their partner, and so she died from complications from that because she didn't have health insurance, and so she was untreated for schizophrenia, untreated for that HIV, and she and basically she just it just progressed.
That I mean, just to even think of what she was going through and still trying to mother and still to the very last day of her life here on earth, wanted to make sure that y'all would both be okay.
Yep.
That's all that mattered to her.
Yep. That's that.
I think
Because
at the
literally,
end of
it's
the
like
day
when we
that
were
you-
both gone.
Yeah.
When I went to college, and when my little sister got into foster care, that's when she started to really deteriorate because she was literally pushing herself for us.
Yeah. Wow. Oprah, when she shared your story, she said that you were a girl at the time, because this was over a decade ago, that has always had the power within.
And what this says to me, and hopefully to you in your own life, is that you start exactly where you are. You don't have to wait until you have the big home or the big square footage or the house that you've always desired or the car that you most want or living in the space that you feel best suits you. You start exactly where you are. This little girl living on the street, having no place to really sleep at night that she could be assured of, started in the local library.
And then she gave me a shout out at my graduation, but I haven't talked to her
Oh
since.
yeah, I know. I meant to ask you about
That was cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, so
And I was in the
this
bathroom.
was really funny because she did the commencement speech at Harvard.
And then people were like, and I was like, I had nothing to do with this. I had no idea. Like,
You were in the loo. You were in the bathroom.
of course I was. People who know me would be like, of course she was.
That's you. Yeah. That is so cool. So, but to hear her give you a shout
That
out,
was cool.
I mean,
Cause like at Harvard, like there are people who like, invented things, who like, who are like Broadway stars and like
Yeah.
Obama's daughter goes there. And so to get a shout out like among those, like
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
so you studied hard. You were at the library all the time. And then you get into Harvard. And was it everything you expected? Was it easy or was it harder?
Am I? Yeah, I feel like I'm old enough to be honest. Yeah, so I had both a great and absolutely awful experience at Harvard. So I had a great experience at Harvard in that I have friends who are like part of my, and their parents and their families who are part of my chosen family. 10 years later, they're part of my life. Like my host mom, they paired me with her, the most amazing people that I could have in my life. And just the type of learning I had access to, like my critical thinking skills were pushed in a way that they've never been pushed before. Like my education was one where I got to take these really cool classes, research for nonprofits, and then the experience of being a Harvard student and a Harvard graduate, where it's not just like foot in the door. It's like they literally open the door and be like, come on in.
Yeah.
That's what it's like to be a Harvard graduate and a Harvard student. And so that was really cool and like world-renowned professors. But also I had to fight for every kind of resource that I needed. Like I knew I needed mental health resources, because when you go through the kind of trauma I've been through, you got to be in therapy for the rest of your life. I need to be in therapy at all times.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, you're not suicidal, so you can't see therapy once a week. And I'm like, I was homeless. I need therapy once a week. And it was a whole thing to get a loan, to get money just to be able to take college prep courses like Summer Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Harvard doesn't have a Summer Bridge program, or didn't at the time, because the person who one of the people who would organize the kind of thing said that would be stigmatizing to our students. Terrible. No, you're making it stigmatizing.
Yeah.
When I was getting some donations because people wanted to donate to me after being kind of on Oprah, and nothing big or anything like that. The head of the and this is the first time I've said this out in public, actually. All of this stuff. But I think it's important people know this. Yeah. The head of financial aid said she wanted to meet me, and then she basically, I was a sophomore, basically threatened me and said that, I don't want to have to deal with attorneys, and so I should probably just take the website down, because I don't really want to have to deal with Harvard's attorneys or anything like that. And I was like, okay.
And you took it down.
Yeah, because
That's
I was
your website.
19.
Yeah.
Oh, what kind of place is that where you do that to a student? And yes, I was 19.
A student who, by the way, has a story that should be celebrated and that should be, screamed from the mountaintops. That
It
baffles
was,
me. That's
yeah,
horrible.
just had to fight for, everything, like the loans. So I didn't finish that thought. Like basically getting a loan so I could go to a college prep program. So I went to Cornell, and I obviously didn't have enough money. They gave me as much money as they could, but there was still like a gap. I asked for money and they said no, because we don't know if you'll actually, show up. And then they gave it to me as a loan, which is fine. But I had to have people throughout all these, like I had to have people like supporting me and helping me advocate, because they weren't listening to me.
Yeah.
So they listened to real adults who are saying, no, do you not know what she's been through? Like she's not only she's gonna show up, but she's trying to prepare herself so she could be set up for Harvard, because she went to 12 different schools. I've done like maybe 8-9 years of school, maybe. It's kind of fuzzy. So I was trying to prepare, and they were like, you need to give her money so she can do this. If you don't have a summer bridge program, you need to give her money so she can do this. I had to fight for everything because they weren't used to having, poor kids.
Yeah.
They're not used to and they're still not used to it, because it's an elite institution, and elite institutions, unfortunately, are very insular. And like I said, I talked about assimilation. Like I had to get a second interview to be like, should you be at Harvard? And it was like 3 hours long with the person who was in charge of all Southern California, like interviews. And they're like, basically being like, can you handle Harvard? Can you handle the snow? And I'm like, I handle homelessness. Like, this is fine.
Yeah.
Like, they did not know what to do with me.
Wow.
They did not know what to do with me. And because of the systems that they were working in, and because of what they were used to, they were using their own like assumptions and knowledge to kind of like frame how they talk to me, which is like basically like, oh, someone's always trying to take advantage. Because I heard a Harvard student who was like, oh, I got the Coca-Cola scholarship, but I'm not telling them, so I could still get financial aid. So all these kind of ways in which like the rich like try to game the system, that's what they were working with. So then they have this homeless kid,
and you're like, dude, I just want to learn.
Yeah, like I'm not trying to game the system.
Yeah.
But that's what the system they were working within, and so they were using that lens in which to interact with me, basically like causing more trauma. And that's why it was like both the best and the worst experience, because I was now entering into a space where because I told the second interviewer, he was like, why Harvard? He's like, you can go to some place like Columbia. That's so awesome. First of all, who says that?
Yeah.
Who says that? That's like people's dream schools. Like, you don't just so
Go
anyway. So that was said. But he was like, why Harvard? And because I knew how to play the game, I said, because if there's not a person who went to Harvard who's in charge, there's a person behind the person in charge helping that person who went to Harvard. And I want to be in the space where decision makers are so that I can make decisions. That's what I said.
So smart.
I had the maturity of a 12-year-old, but I had a brain. And so I knew like intellectually what I needed to say, and it was true.
Yeah.
And so I learned how these spaces work, how decision makers who don't have experiences work. That was a nice lens to kind of have the experience that I had as a homeless child, and then like this elite institution to see how both sectors work, because I use that information to influence like how I work in my current not just my current job, but just in my career as an educator.
Yeah. And I want to talk about your current job and where you are now, because you did go on, despite wanting to stay at Harvard forever because you didn't want to move. You did graduate. You went on to start a professional career, and eventually you got into what you always wanted to do, and that was education and helping other kids. So here in Northeast DC, we have the Rocketship School, which is still a baby, by the way, right?
Like
I mean, I feel like
maybe.
Yeah, it was just born. I mean, this thing. I mean, where's the store? It's just
this is our Infinity Prep campus.
Yes, well, it's beautiful, and there's some summer school going on. We saw some kids in there having lunch, and when you look at these children, do you see yourself in any of them?
Oh, absolutely. Like there's the kid who, asks just a few too many questions. That's me. There's a child who's like super quiet, but like is like really mad, and she's just trying to hold it in. That child. The child who is like just trying to get the teacher to understand what they're saying, and the teacher's like, I don't quite understand what you're saying, and the kid is like, no, I need you to hear this. Like I see myself in like all of these kids, because remember when I talked about like, that curiosity, that inquisitiveness, that, that wonder, like that's in all children. Like that's inherent in the lives of a child. That's just what you are as a child. And so I see that, and I feel like these are my children, and these are me. And even though I'm not in the classroom, like I work with families, I'm working with families so that they can support their children, so that their children can thrive. And we work with some of the most at-risk populations, like in like the city. Like we have like, it's like over like nearly 80% at risk. So that means homeless, in foster care, 2 years or more behind grade level, free and reduced lunch. So very high population, over 25% homeless population across our 3 campuses.
So these kids, they're walking in your shoes.
Yeah.
You know what they're going through.
Yeah.
A lot that nobody here would ever even know what they're experiencing at home.
Yeah.
And so, but there's only one of you, but you're doing what you can. You're focusing here on the charter school. How do you advocate for the kids?
Helping families understand that they have the tools to like solve their own problems. And the thing is, these are families who've been told by the system that their voices don't matter. So then they come to Rocketship, where Rocketship's like, yeah, we want to hear from you. And they're like, whatever. Because like, why would they believe that?
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense that they don't trust us in the beginning. Like they have every reason not to trust us. And so you have to, earn your way to, and that's completely fair because of what they've been through. And so it's about continually asking like for their feedback, continually asking like, what do you want to see? What do you value? And show that you actually understand what they're saying. And then it's taking what you hear, taking like kind of like what are like some of those like gaps that are being seen from like listening to multiple parents and thinking about, okay, what are we going to do about this?
We talk all the time, even as an Asian American, representation matters.
Yes.
But is it enough just to represent? Is it
No.
enough just to be present?
No, being a token is not helpful for anyone because first of all, being a token basically like creates like an excuse. So it's like, oh, you have people of color here. So like, that means we're good. And then also if you're there, but you don't have decision-making power, I'll give you an example. A child that I saw like at this panel after like watching a movie about homelessness. It was a 14-year-old and then it was like director of this, associate director of this. That child doesn't have equal voice. So you have this kid here and like, yeah, we have a kid represented. But did you teach this child like how to answer the type of questions that the decision makers are answering? Is this child nervous because he's the youngest one there? That's tokenism. That isn't true voice. You need to be able to equip people with the skills to be able to advocate for themselves and to be able to speak. You need to give them the tools and you need to give them access. And then you need those decision makers to understand the ways in which they limit things. So like a key example, all the distance learning like hearings, they were all in the morning during the day when teachers are teaching and when families are at work during a pandemic. So they're working and if they're at home, they're with their kids. How are they supposed to engage? And now they can't have their voices heard about distance learning when you need their voices. Why are you having this in the morning when no one can actually engage as opposed to after? These are the kind of things where you need to let people know who are making these decisions so that they can make different decisions so that people can actually be heard.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And which is why representation isn't enough. And so what I really appreciate about my experience here at Rocketship is that I'm someone who I never just do my job. I'm the kind of person who I'm just like, if I see a problem, I'm gonna try to fix it, even if it's none of my business, especially if it's none of my business. And I can be a little annoying. And the fact that I said, you know what, I don't think that this like parent leadership model in DC works in the way that it should. I want to change it. And the fact that I was given space to do that, the fact that my boss is a Black woman, the fact that the executive director was just hired as a Black woman, the fact that I've never seen this like at other charter schools. Because like I worked in the Budson's office, so I was working with a lot of schools over 4 years. So many Black people, like all the principals are Black. Most of the teachers are Black. That's very rare in the charter sector.
And how important is that for Black and brown children?
It's so important. And so when you have like all these leaders in positions of power who not only are there as representation, but in like a strong numbers. So it's not just like one person here. It's like literally like lots of staff, every single principal, our executive director and my boss. That's how you can actually make real change, because then you can say, we're speaking from the perspective of people of color, and so we need you to hear us. Then you can actually make change. And I was actually able to make changes, even though we have a model, because my voice was valued. That was an intentional choice that we made to hire that in ways that represent our community.
Is it making a difference?
It absolutely, yeah. Oh my goodness. The fact that I was able to you're interviewing me right now.
Yeah.
So because I'm it wasn't just me being, homeless, but also doing, good work and being recognized as that was so cool. Black history, one of the education leaders. Yes. And the fact that we have our if you look at schools, surrounding schools, and this is not to knock other schools, because the challenges that they have to deal with are are really difficult. So this is not to knock anyone down, but because of the decisions that we made, our kids are doing better here than the surrounding areas, because of those choices that we made.
We went through this pandemic. We saw that it exposed a lot of inequities, especially in our Black and brown communities. There are obstacles that are still out there. You mentioned the surrounding schools, and that's nationwide. I mean, schools nationwide are hurting, and we saw these inequities. Everything from lack of resources to access to technology. What would you say are the biggest hurdles, or the biggest policies, perhaps? What's standing in the way of helping the kids advance and succeed? What's the biggest thing right now?
The biggest thing, one thing. So I can talk about different things. We need better internet infrastructure. We need stronger safety nets, social safety nets. We need to stop evicting people. We need programs like the parent I was talking to you about. Her name is Ashley McMichael, and shout out to her program, the Innovative Academy of Liberal Arts and Sciences, where it's a 2-generation approach to helping the parent and the child to achieve wealth, access high-paying careers, and believe in themselves. We need stuff like that. But I'd say if I were to limit to one, we need empathy, and not empathy as in I care about this child, because I believe I don't care if you are someone who's white, someone who's a person of color but not Black. You care about children when you're in education. You don't go into this work. You're not making big bucks. You care about children. So I don't mean empathy in terms of care. I mean empathy as in able to put yourself in that person's shoes and understand what's happening. Even when you're stressed, even when a parent is cussing you out, even when you are exhausted because you've been on Zoom and the kids are not able to pay attention because they're tired. Understanding what is happening and then how to then adjust. Because if you think about it, if you're thinking about, empathy in terms of what would you do for your own child? It's very easy for you to think. If I asked you, what does your child need? You would be able to tell me, because it's your child. You know your child, and you could put yourself in your child's shoes because you've grown up with this baby. But sometimes in education, when we're thinking about how do we serve our students, we forget that they're people.
Yeah.
They're human beings. So just think about, what is it that you would need? What is it that you feel if you have kids, you have a niece. If you don't have kids, you have a niece. You have siblings. What would you do if they were crying? If they were acting out?
Yeah. There's always a story.
And apply that to these children. And I know that seems like an oversimplification, but that's the first step in being able to go the extra mile.
I just feel like so many of our teachers are so overwhelmed, right? I mean, that's the other thing, is you look at the system and it's they're being forced to deal with so many different types of issues that are coming their way. And my sister, was a special education teacher, just to see what she had to deal with day in, day out, I was like, how do you absorb all that? And then you go home to your own kids, so it's quite amazing. And so I bow down to teachers day and night, just because their job, that is a tough one to do. You really got to like it and love it to do it and to do it well. What's next? What are your eyes set on? Any new projects coming up, or?
Yeah, so Shout out to my boss. I need to say this, like grad school. So I've been telling her that I was going to go to grad school for about 6 years now.
Wow.
So I need to take the GRE. So that's the first thing.
You get so excited when you talk about this stuff. I feel like it just lights you up. I mean, do you love
This is
it?
important to me. This is really important to me. Like someone asked me, it's like, well, could you ever see yourself like doing something? And I was like, no, I will be in education for the rest of my life. Like, I'm not going to go into anything else. Like, this is my passion.
And then my next question is just why?
Because honestly, I feel like I did not experience like homelessness and the level of trauma that I experienced, like literally being homeless from age 6 to age 18. That is highly unusual. If you look at all the statistics, like basically like the likelihood of me having even graduating high school was like basically like non-existent. Me being alive, the likelihood of that is non-existent. Like honestly, like, and I tell people this, and it's not hyperbole. Like I could be dead, or I could be like a hooker. Mm-hmm. Like that's unfortunately the kind of things that happen. Not to diminish like sex work, but like the type where it's like you're going in because you have like don't have other options as opposed to other forms. But that could have been me. And then and when you look at like the chronic homelessness, like look up chronic homelessness, and I think it's defined as like a month or like maybe a month, maybe 3 months, almost like for like over 12 years. So basically the odds are completely stacked against me. And then to get into a place like Harvard, which is like really selective, I didn't go through all of that to then just become an accountant. Like I didn't like go through all of this to then go, like people say, you know what's important? Because like, when I'm feeling stressed, it's like, what's important is not that you're being successful, but that you're happy. And I'm like, no, because I feel like though I would not recommend it, like 0-10 would not recommend, going through what I went through and then having the kind of experience I went through gives me a lens that I feel like is really important to share. And I have a level of privilege now where I can use my experiences in order to make change. And it's my honor, but it's also my obligation. Why was my mom calling me Oprah? For me to just not actually push myself and create like spaces for others to be able to like, do this work and to be able to make change. Because that's the biggest issue, is that we don't have people in decision-making powers who've actually experienced the things that our families have gone through. And we need more of that. It's probably what I'm going to talk about in my dissertation, like once I actually go to grad school at some point.
You will.
I will. I
have no doubt.
I will, Joanne, I promise. I do this because I need to, because I'm supposed to.
It's your calling.
It's my calling.
It's your calling. It's your truth.
Exactly.
You're walking it.
Exactly.
Walking it. And if you had to share, I always ask this of the people I interview, the best advice you ever got, what would that be? So
I really admire my boss. And I worked with her in the ombudsman's office too. So she was the education ombudsman. And basically she worked here, and I was like, oh no, you don't. And I like followed her. I was like, you're not getting rid of me that easily. And she is a very moral person. And she really like kind of goes by like, what is the right thing to do? What is the ethical thing to do? And she's also like, is a person of faith. And I'm not a person of faith, I'm a spiritual person, but that really guides what she does. When you're doing something that you feel like is your calling, it's really important that you feel right with yourself at the end of the day.
To me, reading between the lines, it sounds like the best advice you've received from her is do the right thing. Do the right thing.
Do the right thing.
And then my last question, I promise. Your biggest regret.
I wish that I could have done more for my mom. I wish that, I don't know really what I could have done, but I just feel like she just didn't have access to so many like resources, and she shouldn't be dead. Like her death was completely preventable. And I was very ashamed for a long time. I didn't talk about this stuff. Like the stuff I told you about my mom was like the first time I said that out loud. like being less ashamed, because it's important for people to hear these things. It's important for people to know what this is like, and not being, fearful as I was, where I would like not speak up because I was afraid, or because I felt insecure, or because I felt like I'm not stable enough.
Or that you didn't have a voice.
I didn't have a voice. Like, I wish I knew that I had a voice when I was younger. So that's definitely a big regret of mine.
Well, I will tell you, I don't know your mother. But what I can tell you is I think that she knows that you did the best that you could. I don't know your sister. I haven't met her, but, and it sounds like you took two different paths, but still found success in different ways. Your mother must have been an extraordinary woman for that to have happened. And she continues to live on, not only in you, but in the work that you do. I love it. And I can't wait to see what you do next. I know you're going to go to grad school. I know you're going to be killing it. And and we'll be checking back in with you, see how everything is going. But Khadijah Williams, it was so awesome to sit here today, get kind of a window into your heart, your soul, your mind.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for this opportunity and to talk about this.
Of course. And we wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Khadijah, thank you for sharing your story. I have no doubt, like I said, she's going to go to grad school. I love the fact that she's still setting goals for herself. She's awesome. A great person to connect with. If you have any questions about homelessness and advocating for the cause, or education and the importance of education for our youth, she would be a great person to be in touch with. So you can stay in touch with her via Twitter at It's Khadijah. Real easy. And you can also find her on LinkedIn.
Now, you say you kissed?
Yeah, it was nothing. Little 5-second kiss. So.
Wait. You're having this horrible evening. Now, how do you end up kissing again?
Well, I wish I knew, Keith. We were both pretty geezied up. 1 second we're fighting, and then next second we're laughing, and then just a quick 10-second kiss.
I thought that you said 5 seconds.
First it was a 5-second one, and then a little break because my beard gave her a tickle. She's cute. And then a 10-second Frencher.
You had your crazy corroded tongue in my girlfriend's mouth?
Just a second. Just 1 second, Dave.
Huh?
Dr. B, let it bip. Well, hello. I shouldn't really talk right now. Well, I suppose you're right. It's got to be done.
Who was that, Linda?
Dave, I've got some good news for you and some potentially upsetting news. First, the good news. I'm gonna sign your papers. You're a free man.
Uh-huh. Let me hear the potentially upsetting news.
Linda and I have fallen for one another. Pretty hard, too. David, I hope you believe me when I say this. I didn't intend for this to happen. It was no one's fault, I guess. It was just...
Wait a minute. I figured this out. You're messing with me.
I wish I were, Dave. However, I did insist that we not go forward without your blessing, because we're best friends. So, what do you say, Dave? Is it all right if I date your ex?
You know what time it is? It is time for your good questions. And I have enlisted the help of one of my dearest friends, love coach, dating guru, author of several books, including a new one that is coming out, Jess McCann, joining us. She is going to be coming out with a new book in September. It is called If Love is a Blessing, Why Do I Feel Cursed? Current mood for so many of you out there, I know, because you guys have been sending me the text messages, okay? Jess, it's great to see you.
Hey, Angie, it's so nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to start this conversation.
I want to begin with the first one. This is one of the first ones that came my way. She texted me and she said, hi, Angie. I went to Jamaica for my 40th, then fell in love with this guy. We are now engaged. This all happened within 2 weeks. Is this too soon? Is it too soon, Jess?
Well, Angie, after the year we just had, nothing sounds better than going to a tropical island, meeting a handsome stranger, and falling in love. Everything and everyone seems just perfect when you're on vacation and filtering things through that vacation lens, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's really important to take your relationship back to the mainland, back to real life, and see how it does with, dirty dishes in the sink and laundry on the floor and in-laws popping in. It's really important to test your relationship back there in real life and not against the backdrop of tropical palm trees and pina colada.
And so I never want to discount anyone's love at first sight story, but I think reading between the lines with everything that you just said there, yeah, too soon. Listen, I try to put this in perspective. It's just like how we do the news, right? Everyone's like, I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, I'm not the best anchor woman out there. I'm no Barbara Walters, okay? I don't go up there and I'm not like polished. I don't enunciate correctly. I don't necessarily even use proper grammar. That's okay. I just want to keep it real. I always envision that I'm talking to a friend or I'm talking to my mom. Listen, my sister rolls up and is like, I just met this guy over on the island. We're engaged after 2 weeks. I'd be like, what are you doing? I'm no love coach. And that's it. I mean, you really put it in perspective, but part of me is just like, no. Let's slow our roll.
So right. And we've all seen the movie, How Stella Got Her Groove Back. I mean, this is straight out of that movie. And we know that when she takes Taye Diggs back to the mainland, things get complicated, right? So I would say, hey, watch that. See what happens to them.
Eugene, he sent a text message and he just wanted to know, it was a general question. Have the rules of dating and relationships changed over the years?
I see two big trends coming up. And in fact, we just highlighted one of them, that when people come out of a pandemic and they are kind of hungry for connection, they can rush into a relationship with someone they find interesting. However, I also see another trend, which I just spoke about with a writer from askmen.com, and it's called slow dating. This is a new trend where people in the pandemic that have been dating all along, or at least trying to, have spent a lot of these dates on the phone and through FaceTime, and they've really heavy loaded the mental emotional connection because there was no physical component during a pandemic. You couldn't really meet up, or you really, it was kind of awkward with the masks and everything closed down. So people have started to slow date. And I see that a lot of people have really found that to be the better way to date. The better way to get to know someone is to get to know them on a very much a slower paced, and just a slower kind of pace, get to know them personally, and then enter the physical component of the relationship. So I think we're going to see a lot more people slow dating now that they're out and about, because they see that it works. And it also, if you're not physical too fast, you're more apt to notice red flags. You're more apt to notice qualities that you don't think are going to mesh with you in the long run. And it's easier to walk away when you haven't gotten all hot and heavy with someone to begin with. It's that physical component that really leads people to disregard the red flag and cross their fingers and hope it just goes away because you're so wrapped up in the physicality of the relationship. So two polar opposite trends coming down the pipeline, rushing into things and slow dating.
People are just kind of, they're exhausted with this stuff, right? With dating apps. I talk to my girlfriends and they're like, I'm just over it, to the point where, one of my girlfriends, she had the best bio. What
app is she on?
She's on the yellow one. Is that Bumble?
Yes.
Okay.
I love that you called it the yellow one.
About me. Vaxxed and waxed, mathlete, athlete, ESFP, tall AF, not here to bang randos. That's in her bio.
That's so funny. That is so funny.
Like she's going to eliminate a whole group of people.
Well, you know what it is, honestly? If you really pull back to look at the grand picture, the big picture, people are just tired of having a relationship with their phone, okay? That's what they're tired of. And when you're app dating, you're not really connecting with people because you're just messaging. So you're really connecting with your phone and a picture. And that is very exhausting. The phone relationship, we're always on our phone. It's not fulfilling at all. It's a one-way directional relationship. Your phone can't give back to you. I mean, I met my husband by asking him to pass me a menu at a bar. That's how we met.
Hey, I met mine at a bar too. I love this.
We could just do it the old-fashioned way. And if not, I mean, there are so many dating apps out there. But Coffee Meets Bagel is a great app because they don't overload you with choice. And I'm really of the mindset that too many choices leads to choice paralysis.
I mean, what do you, because I don't know anything about dating apps. So what do you mean?
We discovered a big issue. There are a lot more men using dating apps than women. Studies show the breakdown is at 64% men and 36% women.
That is a lot of thirsty dudes.
So Coffee Meets Bagel gives you a certain amount of matches or bagels every day. You know, here are your 6 bagels. Here are your 12 bagels. This is all you're working with right now. Okay. See who you like, message who you like. You know, other apps, there's just, you could swipe for hours, you know, hundreds of people, and that's fine. But then you have to have the discipline to pick just a few and work with just a few and not let your, not let the overwhelming abundance of choice drag you back into the well to keep swiping. You've got to be very disciplined. So Coffee Meets Bagel makes it really simple because they're disciplined for you. They're like, here are your matches, cherish these matches, right? Be grateful for these matches and really focus on them and see if there's a connection right here in front of you.
Jess McCann, you are a savior. You're awesome. Where can people find you?
I would say go to Instagram, say Jess to love. I'm there, and my DMs are open for anyone that needs help.
And I know your new book coming out in September. I'm so excited. If love is a blessing, why do I feel cursed? Everybody who sent in your good question, continue to follow up with us. Apply some of these things, this great knowledge, these gems that Jess dropped, and follow up with us. Let us know how it's going, okay?
Sounds great to me.
You watched or listened to the very end. Thanks so much. Don't worry, you can watch more by subscribing to the Oh My Goff Show on YouTube, Facebook Watch, Twitch, or Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your favorite shows.
Me and my girls tried this dance, and we killed it.
One, two,